question is, out of the qualities that you want from your coworkers, which behaviors and attitudes describe you? So, which describe you? And not just which describe you, how would someone describe you if you weren't there, but which describe you all the time? And it's very easy in a session like this to get into that mindset where you go, oh gosh, I wish my husband was here to hear this. Or, yeah, I wish my kids were here so they could hear this lesson. Or I wish my mother-in-law could be reminded of listening, right? So it's very easy in a session like this to get a little bit of that. And so what you're going to hear from me today is I'm going to ask you to have what's referred to as an inside-out mindset. And you know, this is a Stephen Covey term. And I had the great privilege of doing several projects with Stephen Covey. And I love this term because it's about today, just make it about you. Just today, make it about you. What can you learn? What can you take away? I know everybody in this room wants to be a better person. And I actually know that all of you are great people. But today, let's just think about, maybe I could just learn something a little bit, improve just a little bit more today. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know that high ethics equals high performance. You already know that great employees get some great organizations have great advantages. They do better financially. They attract better employees. They have less turnover. They get more customer referrals, and they have higher customer satisfaction ratios. You know that. You also already know that great employees work with less stress. Ah, good. To work with less stress. You know, if I know that I did that job well, I sleep better at night. If I know that I didn't talk behind someone's back, I sleep better at night. If I know that I dotted every I and crossed every T, I sleep better at night, I have less stress. That's a great feeling. They experience better relationships, of course. They contribute more to the organization, and they get more customer referrals. You know that. And they also enjoy more opportunities, and they enjoy more success. You already know that. So let's get started. What about this statistic here? Gallup says that half of all employees surveyed in a recent study admitted to doing something unethical or even illegal on the job. And yet, Gallup also says that number gets big, over half, 55% of consumers make their purchasing choices based on ethics and accountability. That's part of something that they factor in. So as an organization, it's not just a heartfelt thing. This is something that we need to do for the bottom line as well. Our definition today for ethics: doing what's right, doing what's fair, doing what's honest, and doing what's legal. So this guy here, you know who this guy here is? This is Babe Ruth. And Babe Ruth is mostly known for what? Babe Ruth is mostly known for what? Home runs. Babe Ruth, great home run hitter. So these numbers here, 11, 53, and 40, these numbers here tell a story about Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth started in 1918 as a professional baseball player. And as a professional baseball player, his very first year hitting home runs, he only hit 11 home runs. Only 11 home runs his very first year. Now that's crazy because you know how good he is, right? How good he ended up being. So only 11 home runs. It's just absolutely nuts. So just so you know, his intentions were good. He wanted to hit more home runs. He did. He wanted to. His instincts were wrong. Good intentions. He had the wrong instincts. You see, that very first year that Babe Ruth was playing in professional baseball, he used a 53-ounce bat. 53-ounce bat his very first year playing pro ball. Now, you know that's a big old bat, right? So what's a typical baseball player, professional baseball player? What do they use?
30s.
Yeah.
30s.
So 33. For example, I'm from San Diego. Tony Gwynn used a 33-ounce bat, 32-ounce bat. So a 53-ounce bat is a big old bat, and that's how heavy that bat was that Babe Ruth used. Now, it took him an entire year to figure out that the heavier the bat, the slower his swing. And so his intentions were good. He wanted to hit that ball hard. He wanted to hit it far. His intentions were good, but his instincts were wrong. He thought, heavier bat, I'll hit the ball harder, the ball will go farther. But in actuality, he needed to increase his swing, the rotation of his swing, and therefore, he needed a lighter bat. It took him a whole year to figure out that he needed a 40-ounce bat, and after that, the rest was history. Yeah? After that, the rest is history. So again, intentions are good. Instincts were wrong. In so many organizations, the intentions are good. You have your codes of ethics, and you have your ethics policies, and you have your values, and you have folks sign the ethics codes when they first start. Do all those things. Good intentions, wrong instincts. Not saying those things are wrong, but needs a little bit more. So, who can tell me, what do these organizations have in common? Somebody, talk to me. What do these FIFA, Wells Fargo, Volkswagen, what do they have in common? They all have scandals, right? They're all big, big scandals right now. Here's what's interesting. Not only FIFA have a scandal, and Wells Fargo, of course, has a scandal, and Volkswagen, huge scandal. What's interesting, they had ethics policies. They also have value statements. They have all their employees sign off that they understand and know the code of ethics. So what does that tell you? It's not enough. It's not enough, right? So what does that tell you? It tells you that it's not enough. You need to do a little bit more. So who can tell me who this guy is right here? Malcolm Gladwell. Great. And Malcolm Gladwell is mostly known for The Tipping Point. In fact, he's a very famous author. He's mostly known for The Tipping Point. You're familiar with. He wrote Blink. He wrote David and Goliath. Malcolm Gladwell is a great, great author. In fact, Malcolm Gladwell on this here made tens of millions of dollars on The Tipping Point. If you haven't read The Tipping Point, by the way, put it on your books of reads, because it's a good read, and it's really, when a product goes over the edge and becomes, popular for the masses, and how and why does that happen. It's a great read. Malcolm Gladwell makes tens of millions of dollars on The Tipping Point. Now, here's what's interesting. Malcolm Gladwell did not create The Tipping Point. The Tipping Point was created by this guy right here. This is Martin Grodzins. Martin Grodzins wrote the white paper on The Tipping Point. He did all the research. He did all the analytics. He did everything. He did all the knowledge, all the stuff. He knew everything about The Tipping Point. Guess how much Martin Grodzins made on The Tipping Point? Zero. Martin Grodzins made zero. Malcolm Gladwell makes tens of millions of dollars. Martin Grodzins, not a famous man. In fact, you do not even know who he is in this picture here. He's, this guy right there. That's Martin Grodzins, the guy in the back. So what was the difference? What was the difference? The difference is Malcolm Gladwell, great storyteller. And the difference is Malcolm Gladwell knew how to take all that information and take it from here and put it here. Malcolm Gladwell knew how to take the information, put it from here, and move it here. He made it emotional. Malcolm Gladwell, when you read his books, you feel like you're reading fiction stories. They're so good and so engaging. And all of us love our stories. We love our stories. Malcolm Gladwell is a great storyteller. And that's really something that you need to be thinking about your ethics programs. How do I take it from here? How do I get everybody to feel how do I get everybody to feel so passionate about it? How do I get a better story so that everybody is on board? Let's say you have a new employee And this new employee kind of has this attitude of, not my job, right? That's somewhat the attitude that you've got. And your world is I got to get them to have the attitude of, I own it, I want it, I live it, I breathe it, this is me, yeah? And I would love to tell you that this is a very easy thing. You know that there are barriers that get in the way. You're going to hear me refer to these barriers as their personal bias, yeah? They have the personal bias that gets in the way of them being, it's not my job, to, oh my gosh, I own this and I love it, right? So let's see, what is that made up of? What is this emotional bias? What is this personal bias? What is it made up of? Because we all have bias. And actually, the science tells us that it's very easy to tell when someone has a bias. It's very, very hard to tell when we have one ourselves. So just so you know, it's very easy to determine if someone is, has a political bias or a religious bias or a cultural bias. Very easy to determine it. But it's really hard for individuals to determine their own bias. Very, very hard for us to see it. So let's look at some of the elements that impact this personal bias. The first one is, which you're going to hear me refer to as attention scarcity. Attention scarcity. Your eyes. You're like, what? What is that? Attention scarcity. Well, it's a science term, but it doesn't take a neuroscience to kind of figure out what that might mean. Attention scarcity. People don't have a lot of time. They can't give you a lot of their attention. Anybody familiar with ASM syndrome in this room? Well, a whole bunch of you have it. So if you're not familiar with it, a whole bunch of you have it. How many of you have a cell phone? Yeah, okay. So hold that up high. Be proud. Be proud. Hold it up high. So he is suffering with ASM syndrome. This is an attention-sucking yes? Mm-hmm. And this thing sucks the day out of your life, doesn't it? It sucks the day out of your world. Now think about it. You are at the grocery store, and if you're in line and there's more than one person in front of you, what are you doing? You're going to go to this thing, you're going to try to delete a couple of emails. Who can I respond to? Yeah? If you're in line at the airport, I laugh because it's almost like a bunch of junkies. I mean, that's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have it for 2 hours. What do? I need to go through this. I need to make sure that I've seen everything and I've touched everything and I've responded to everything. It's crazy how absorbed, how much this thing absorbs our day and absorbs our life. No longer are we just responsible to be when we're at work. We have to be responsible for constantly managing our Twitter feed and staying on top of that, and our Facebook and our LinkedIn and our emails, and constantly people can get a hold of you 24 hours a day. And the expectation is you're going to respond 24 hours a day. This is truly an attention-sucking monster. And never before in the history of time have we had so much information at our fingertips. And that's a great thing. I love it. I love having access to that information. But never before in the history of time had we had so much information coming at us that we have to stay on top of. We don't even have time to go look at some of that great information. We don't have time to study the trends and to see what's going on and to figure out what are some other things that we can do. We just don't have time because we're being pulled in so many different directions. Well, that's not just you. You're not alone. So are your employees and so are your coworkers. Everybody's being pulled in a million different ways, and so no one really time should give to developing an ethical culture. So everyone wants to say, that's not mine. I got way too much going on. I got kids to raise, and I got bills to pay, and I got so much, and I got a Facebook I need to stay on top of, right? Attention scarcity. It's the first element to what you're going to hear me refer to as their emotional bias or their personal bias. And it seems like a little thing, but it's huge. Because if you don't give the time and attention that something needs, people know it. So there also is one opportunity that I had working with Stephen Covey, and we were having a cup of coffee. We were on a break. We were actually working on a training program. And he said to me, he goes, Michelle, you have kids? I said, yep, I have 3 kids, super proud. And he says, is that hard? Is it hard to balance kids and work and your big career? And I said, yeah, it's the hardest thing I do in the world. It's so hard to balance it. And he said, you know, I've been doing it for a lot of years. And he goes, you know, I have a big family. And he said, and one of the things that really helped me was that whole concept of, I don't know why this is moving so often. I'm going to hold on one sec. I'll come back to that. And he says, it's moving on its own. It's not even on. Huh. All right. So he says to me, you know, putting first things first. He says, I have secretaries that actually put my kids and my grandkids, everything, all their meetings, everything they do, they put it on my schedule first. And those things get on the schedule first. And that's awesome. And he says, and so I can decide when I get a speaking engagement whether or not I want to take it. But at least I know. And so what you're going to hear from me is you have to put your employees and your coworkers and the time that you need to spend, you got to put that on your calendar first. You got to put those things on first. Now, sometimes you got to move that around, and sure, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person because you put down, stop by Shannon's cubicle and make sure I hear about her vacation. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're a busy person. You still have to put those things on your calendar first. Someone's coming back from vacation, you need to put that on your calendar. Say, how was it? Let me hear from you. I want to hear about your family. I want to know you. I want you to feel respected. I want you to know that I care. So putting first things first, one of the first elements to add to this attention scarcity as part of the bias that we have. All right, so second one, and you already saw this, but you're going to hear me refer to this as the engagement divide. And you all have had that brand new employee that comes in opening day, man, and they look like this. And they are excited, and they're brilliant, and 6 weeks later, they look like this. And you're heck? What happened? Why is that? They were so beautiful 6 weeks ago. Oh my gosh. And so what you're going to hear from me is there's something referred to as the engagement divide. And so let's say that this line here represents how engaged your employee is. And this line over here, this is going to represent how long they've been with you. And so obviously, when an employee is new, they are highly engaged. They're excited. You know, you told them it's a great company. They're excited to be there. It's a new opportunity. And so it's great that they're engaged. And so, you know, you want to keep that engagement high. But after 6 months, and sometimes it's 3 months, but the study shows typically after about 6 months, their engagement goes down. And it goes down dramatically. And it goes down because folks have kind of left them alone. And they're not getting the touches that they were getting. And they're not getting the hugs and the attention that they were getting. And they're not getting the same kind of focus. And so what you're going to hear from me is, this is where we lose some of our best people. We lose our best people at about 6 months down the road, a year into it. And we lose them because, not because they're not still good, but because we stopped telling them that they were still good. And this is what you'll hear me refer to as the engagement divide. When that engagement goes down, sometimes they stay with you. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because then they're kind of retired in place. Yeah? You'd much rather have them leave. But who leaves? Who leaves is your best people, because they can get a job. They're good. They can get a job anywhere. So you want to make sure that you're constantly touching and embracing these people. 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you can't let it go. Someone doesn't stop becoming important because they're no longer new. And this is truly what you'll hear me refer to as the engagement divide. There is an emotional separation. I always chuckle because you'll have some executives when they leave go, oh my gosh, why? And then you ask them, well, when was the last time you spent time with them? And they go, oh, I never did. And yet, well, there you go, right? I can't believe he quit. And there you go. So there's that engagement divide. According to Gallup, boy, this thing is on fire today. 89% of employers think employees leave for money, and only 12% of employees actually do. Pretty interesting stuff. So we think it's about money. Not about money. It's not about money. It's about here. It's about them feeling good about where they work. All right, let's move on. What do they have in common? Rocky, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. I almost want to take the battery out so I can just hold it here. Wow, okay, I have to stop for a second. Tell me, what do these three movies have in common? Yeah, yes. So they're all great movies, right? They're all great movies, but in all these movies you also see a hero. In all these movies you also see that they have a hero. And it's interesting because there's been some work done on this hero model. In fact, this gentleman by the name of Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with Many Faces. And so this is the hero model. You probably learned this hero model if you ever took a film writing class or if you ever took a story writing class. You learned about this hero model. And it looks like this. I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'll explain to you why it matters. So first of all, the world is normal. And then in the hero model, something changes. And then the hero struggles with that change. And then in walks the mentor who says, you know, I'll help you, but you got this. And then at the end of the movie, the hero saves the day. So that's the hero model. So let's take Star Wars, for example. The oldest Star Wars, I think it came out in 1976. So in that movie, who's the hero of that movie? No. The hero is Luke Skywalker, yeah? So Luke Skywalker is the hero of that movie. And Luke Skywalker, there's that attention-sucking monster that somebody's got. All right. So Luke Skywalker, in the very beginning of that movie, the world is very normal. Luke Skywalker is a teenager. He's kind of a whiny teenager. And he's sitting around his aunt and uncle's farm, and he's saying, nothing ever happens around here. And then something changes. Luke Skywalker's, his aunt and uncle's farm gets attacked. He gets attacked, they get killed. Then he finds that message, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, right? And he's asked to take on the dark side, and Luke Skywalker says, I can't do this. I'm just Luke Skywalker, I'm not a Jedi Knight or anything. In walks the mentor. And the mentor of that movie is who? No, not Yoda, that's later. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Ben says to Luke Skywalker, Ben Kenobi says, Luke, you got this. You can do this. This is all you. You are going to be amazing. He doesn't say, we got this. We are amazing and you can come join us. No, he says, you got this. You got this. All right, let's look at Rocky. The old Rocky, the very first Rocky. Remember the beginning of that movie? The world is normal. Rocky is a very average boxer. In fact, he's kind of a bad boxer. Right? He kind of walks like this, he talks like this. He's got this dingy apartment, and he opens up his fridge, and there's nothing in there, and he's broke, and he's a bad boxer, and then something changes. Rocky gets an opportunity to do what? He gets an opportunity to fight the champ. He gets an opportunity to fight Apollo Creed, the best boxer in the world. He gets an opportunity to fight Apollo Creed. And Rocky struggles. He says, I'm just Rocky Balboa. I'm not very good at this. And he struggles. He says, you know, I can't do this. And in walks the mentor. And who's the mentor in that movie? Ah.
His coach.
Yeah, his coach. His name was Mickey. Talks like this. Mickey says, Rocky, you got this. You can do this, right? Yeah. He says, you got it. He doesn't say, we will do this. He doesn't say, we have this and you can come join. He says, you have it in you. You can do this. And I know we have some young folks in the room, so I will go through the Harry Potter model just because. All right, so the world is normal. Harry, in the beginning of Harry Potter, very normal kid, lives under a stairway, very normal. Something changes for Harry. He finds out he's a wizard. He finds out he's got these powers, and then he's told that, you know, he's got to take on this guy that's not supposed to be named, but they name him anyway. His name's Voldemort. And he's told, you got this, right? And he struggles. He says, you know, I can't do this. I'm not a wizard. He goes, yes, you know, because his mentor is who? Dumbledore, thank you. I knew people would know. You can always know. There's always a Harry Potter fan. All right, so Dumbledore doesn't say, Harry, we got this. Dumbledore says, you have this. You have it in you, Harry. You have the ability to do this. And then, of course, Harry goes on and saves the day. And so what you're hearing from me is everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. Everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. I had 3 kids, and never did anybody want to dress up like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Everybody wanted to be Luke Skywalker. Nobody wanted to be Robin. They all want to be Batman. Everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. And so when you're looking at your ethics programs and your values-centered meetings, when you're looking at that, you got to turn to folks and let them know. This is you. This is inside you. You got this. It's not our thing, and you're lucky to join us. It's a, this is in you. This is in your heart. And that is the hero model. Everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. You know what? Let's let them. Let's make them the hero of this ethics and this values-based story. In fact, I love this quote. Despite the code of ethics, the ethics programs and special departments, corporations, they don't make the decisions. Employees do. Employees make the decisions. It's not your code of ethics that makes the decisions. It's the employees. Let's let them be the hero of this story. All right, this is a picture of my daughter Jenna when she was younger. And Jenna's now 17, and she's a pain in the rear. But at this time, so she was in 1st grade. And it's also her 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Evans. And Mrs. Evans was an amazing teacher. And every year she got the best class. Every year she got the best class, or so the other teachers said. And so one day I went up to Mrs. Evans and I said, how do you do it? How do you always luck out and get the best students? And she said to me, Michelle, come on. I've been doing this 30 years, 35 years. I don't luck out and get the best students. And I said, all right, so then share with me. What is it? How do you get these students to behave so beautifully? And she said, well, you know, I very, very seldom critique. She says, I may critique 2 or 3 times out of the school year. She says, I really just commend the behavior that I'm looking for. She says, you know, when the kids are in line and everybody's chatting and wiggling and fooling around, and she says, I will look for the one child that's not. And she'll look for Katie and she'll say, oh, gosh, Katie, I love the way you're standing there so politely and respectfully and paying attention. Thank you so much. And she said, guess what? Everybody else all of a sudden stands and, you know, is polite and respectful. And she said, it's amazing how that happens. She says, when we have our quiet reading circles and everybody's supposed to be quiet and reading and everybody's chatting, she said, I will find the one student that is engaged in their book and loving their story and reading their story on their carpet. And she said, and I will say, Tommy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for loving that book and being engaged in that book and just being so focused on your reading. And guess what? All the other kids, they just want to do it as well because they want that same kind of stroking. So what you're going to hear from me is let's do that with our employees. Let's just commend the behavior constantly. Commend the behavior and stroke the behavior that we'd like to see. Yep, and that will eliminate that engagement. This circle here represents your organization. So let's just say that this is all your goals, all your challenges, everything that you've got going on at your organization. And your organization wants to be successful. But you need some other people in order to be successful. You need employees. And boy, those employees. The circle here represents everything in that employee's world, their family, their community that they live in, and maybe some of the volunteer work that they do, and some of the stuff that they're doing at night, trying to get their MBA, and all the things that they do, and all their goals, and everything that would make up their success. And then you can't have success without customers. And so this circle here represents your customers. And they have goals, and they have challenges, and they need you for a little part of that in order to be successful. And it's so important that we realize that we're constantly influencing and connecting with these other worlds. We have the ability to impact so much more than just our organizations. But none of these worlds will be successful unless they're all surrounded by a world that is values-based, by a world that is focused on integrity, and by a world that is focused on having the best ethics, right? Ethics that comes from the heart. So a very simple picture, but tells a really powerful story. We need each other. I spent 6 years of my life speaking on behalf of Dr. Spencer Johnson, who wrote the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And I'm sure a few of you in this room have heard of that book, Who Moved My Cheese? Pretty popular book. In fact, incredibly popular book. Over 50 million copies were sold. But he taught me a great lesson. He said, Michelle, he said, anybody can make something more complicated. Anybody can make something more complicated. He said, the real brilliance is those that can simplify something that is complicated. And so you want to create a simple story for your folks. A simple story that shows that they're part of something bigger, but that they're an integral part of something bigger. Yeah? But simple is not wrong. Simple is good. Keep it simple, keep it authentic, keep it real. A simple story will help, again, alleviate this engagement divide. Okay, so we're overcoming this emotional bias. We've got attention scarcity, we've got engagement divide, and the third one is what you'll hear me refer to as risk or loss aversion. Yeah? Risk aversion. There's a gentleman by the name of Daniel Kahneman. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and in fact, he received the Nobel Prize for his work in this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And so I'm going to show you a graph. And this graph is truly kind of nutshells some of the work that he did. So if you look at this graph, you've got the horizontal line, and that line represents losses and gains. And then you've got this line going up and down that represents how I feel about those losses or gains, right? How do I feel about it? Do I feel good or do I feel bad? So now looking at that graph, you would assume that that line would just go perfectly up and perfectly, almost like this, right? You would assume that. So in other words, if your uncle sent you a check for $10,000, that would be a gain. And you'd be happy about that. He said, I just want you to have this money. And that would be a gain, so you'd feel good about it. And so you might plot that right there. And if he sent you another check the following month for another $10,000, you would feel even happier about that. And so that would be more of a gain, and you'd feel happier, and you would plot it there. If you lost that check, the assumption is that you would be sad, and so you would start to plot it down there, right? You see how this works? So the assumption is this line would go straight like that. And that's what actually Daniel Kahneman thought until he did his research. And what he found was the line doesn't go straight up like that. The line goes like this. And this is actually referred to as Condiments Curve. The line goes like that. So now look at that line. We've got a bunch of smart people in this room. I know we've got some really big degrees. All right, you're looking at that, and you go, all right, so it goes up really steep on that lower left-hand quadrant, and then it flattens out on the upper right-hand quadrant. Now, why is that? Well, what you're going to hear from me is what Daniel Kahneman found, that people are more motivated to avoid risk, to avoid loss, than they are to gain something, right? To go after something in which they'll gain. So if you think about it, if you have a situation, you have this new employee, and you tell them how good it's going to be when they work with you in your values-based organization, and you kind of take them from here and you move them up here. And that's not a bad thing. You will have some impact as you tell that story with your employee. There will be some impact. They will have some feeling towards that. However, think about it this way. What if you could also show them that there's risk involved? And I know we don't like to think about this, kind of the carrot and the stick, right? But we don't like to think about it. But people are more motivated to move from bad, to avoid loss, you have to show them there are consequences to not behaving in our values-based world. There are consequences, and you take them down here. Now all of a sudden, when I add both stories together, I've got a lot more impact in that employee. So remember earlier I said Babe Ruth had good intentions but poor instincts. Your intentions are good as you come in and you talk about your ethics organizations and your values-based organizations, but you also have to talk about the consequences to not. Because what Kahneman found, and this is the big people are 2 to 3 times more motivated to move from something bad than they are to go towards something good. They're more motivated to move from loss. And an interesting example of that is if you've gone to a fast food restaurant, a big chain recently, you see that if it's the hamburger, it now says the calories below. So maybe that hamburger says 800 calories. Yeah? You would think that that would help people make better eating decisions. Yes, if I saw 800 calories, you would think that folks would say, oh, I don't want that. Hasn't made much of an impact. Now, when they put below that hamburger, it requires 9 hours of running to, burn those calories. Now, all of a sudden, people don't want it. Why? Because you're more motivated to move from something bad, to avoid risk. This is our survival skills. Our brain is all about how do I survive. In fact, let's look at the brain for a second. It's got 3 major parts. So you know that in 7th grade you were taught that this squiggly part is referred to as the new brain or the neocortex. And this is where you make those analytical decisions and you look at you study, some of you accountants, you study your numbers, and I don't do that. But if you were, this is where you do it. You study things, you study statistics. And then there's this other part of the brain that's called the limbic system. This is where you process some of the emotions that you feel. Then there's this other part of the brain, and this is referred to as the old brain or the stem, or it's also sometimes folks call it the reptilian brain or the dinosaur brain. And this, of course, is where you process survival, fight or flight, yeah? Now, all of that you know. Here's what you may not be aware of. The old brain is also the gatekeeper to the rest of the brain. So it's the gatekeeper. So back when I was in college in San Diego, my parents owned a hotel. And so if you wanted to have your parents pay for college, you had to work at the hotel. And so my job, at that time, it's a long time ago, my job was to go into organizations and try to sell hotel rooms or meeting rooms like this and banquets at our hotel. And back then, when you walked into an organization, it was always a female at that front desk. She was always there, and there was always the guy in the back corner I wanted to talk to. I wanted to talk to that guy in the office. That's just how it was back then. Sorry, gals, but that's just how it was. And so every day I would bring in chocolates, or sometimes I bring in, muffins or bagels. I'm always thinking, how do I get, past that decision maker? And that's the way to think about the old brain. In order to engage somebody, we've got to speak to their old brain, to their survival instincts. The old brain likes concrete. The old brain likes emotion. The old brain likes stories. The old brain wants to survive. If it's dark, it's late at night, you're walking through the jungle, you're all alone, and all of a sudden, you see this. What goes through your head? Run! Yeah, some of you are saying, well, actually, a couple of bad words went through my head, but yes, run! Yes! You think, how do I survive? No, you don't think, how many stripes are on the back of that kitty? Or, I wonder how many miles per hour he can run versus how many miles per hour I can run. No, you think, I got to get out of here. I got to survive, right? And that's our old brain talking. Our old brain is all about survival. We're always wanting to avoid loss. We're always trying to minimize risk. And so as much as it's something that's not within our instinct to talk about the consequences to not having an ethical organization, it's something that we need to do. We need to talk about what are the consequences if we don't do the right thing. All right, so let's look at this. Oh, I love this. Desire is not a strong enough emotion for someone to make the right choice. And that's confusing. So if you think about it, you would think that it'd be enough to just want to make the right choice. No. No. Sometimes that people need other motivations. Desire's not enough. If desire was the only motivation we needed, you know, I can tell you, I'm desiring right now to be about 39 years old, and I'm desiring to be, you know, 5'8". That would be nice. But that's not enough. Desire's not enough, right? There are some other things that come into making the right choice. Okay, so we've got attention scarcity. We have this engagement divide, and then, of course, risk aversion. And then the final element to overcoming that bias, that is what you're going to hear me refer to as the incumbent advantage. Wherever they come from, wherever they've been before, they bring all that luggage in with them. All your employees, all your coworkers, they all come in with a different perspective because they're carrying all this stuff with them. Yeah? And if they were at another company that had an ethics policy and had a values-based, you know, luncheon every other Tuesday, but yet the top salesperson didn't have to follow it, that's where they come from. That's their perspective. That's what they're accustomed to. Perhaps they were raised in a family where the father was a really competitive athlete, and he said, you not only win, you win at all costs. That's their bias. That's where they come from, and they're bringing that in with them. And you can't ignore that. You have to talk about where people come from and what they're used to and what they're bringing in with them, because whatever they did before, that has the advantage. That's changing how they think. What's worse? An executive telephones to purchase shares of a company stock the afternoon before a major announcement by his company, or an employee takes home a case of orange construction paper for his son's school project. Put up a finger, one or two. Which one's worse? Oh, they're equal. Well, for fun, let's just put up one or two. Come on. All right, lots of ones. Yeah, sure. All right, we'll do another one. A vendor offers a small token of appreciation, also known as a bribe, or to a purchasing agent, obviously to get the contract, or an employee has someone else clock out for him, right? An hour after he leaves. Which one's worse? Yeah, they're both awful, yeah? I'll do one more. The president of a local chamber of commerce modifies the statistics he presents to his members to increase membership loyalty, or a coworker tells ethnic jokes in the company cafeteria. Yeah. Well, this is a values-based ethics group, and so you know that they're both bad. There is no comparison one between the other. I go to a lot of organizations, and they will tell me, or I'll see fingers, ones or twos. You already know that the little things mean a lot. And it's the little things that help determine whether or not the big things ever happen, right? It's if the little things live in a culture of silence, more prevalent that the big things will actually occur, right? You look at Wells Fargo, that was a great organization, still a great organization, but they had a culture of silence. They had a culture where it was probably better off if you said nothing. Those little things matter a lot. Individuals consider impacts when making ethical decisions. They think about, will the violation be discovered? Will I find out if I'm actually taking this ream of paper home? They think, will someone be emotionally affected? Will someone lose their job because of it? Are significant dollars involved? That's a big one. Will this behavior physically harm anyone? Worse, the behaviors of others. That's what folks do. They justify it. Well, this is bad, but that's a lot worse, so I'm not doing that. And that's a justification. You got to hear that. You almost have to hear that like someone scratching on a chalkboard. It's got to be that annoying to you. Doesn't matter. They're both bad. The little things mean a lot. So how do you deal with these little things? Everybody stand up and find a partner. Stand up and find a partner. I know you had lunch, so stand up. Let's find a partner. What's that?
You're running out of time.
Okay. And go ahead and turn back to back with your partner. Turn back to back. Yep. Turn back to back. And now, here's what I want you to do. Turn back to back with your partner. And now what I want you to do is change 3 subtle things about your appearance without saying a word. Now, quietly, in this room, change 3 subtle things about your appearance. 3 very subtle things. Without saying a word, change 3 subtle things about your appearance. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds. Very quickly, change 3 subtle things about your appearance. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and now I'm going to give you 20 seconds to turn around, try to determine what 3 things were changed. Go. Go, very quickly. And stop. Stop. Stop, stop, stop. You were the perfect audience. Go ahead and have a seat. We're not really doing it again. You were perfect. Okay. So, here's what happened. Some of you know what happened, and some of you don't have a clue. But here's what happened. The first time when I said, you know, go ahead, turn around, you're going to change 3 things, you're going to determine what 3 things are changed. Some of you, when I said that, went, holy cow, I don't even know what color hair she has, right? And now, the second time when I said, find another partner, you went like this. You went, oh, hi, nice to meet you. You know, right? So you were checking them out. You're not supposed to, by the way, but you were full on checking them out. Now, why were you checking them out? You were checking them out because you wanted to see what was it like right now so that I could know what things were changing in the future, right? So the only way I could know that is if I knew really what's it like right now. And that's the way it is with your organization. You've got to stay on top of what is this like right now? What are we doing right now? Stay on top of those little things. Because if you don't know the little things, you don't know how your company is slowly, how your organization is slowly changing in the future. The little things matter a lot. All right. Now, I've been told that Oklahoma City is a big sports fan group, yeah? Yeah, that's what I hear. So my husband, his name is Rob, and he's from Wisconsin, and he has this very, very weird talent. Rob is an amazing free throw shooter, amazing. Almost every day, he goes outside and he takes 300 free throws. So almost every day he takes 300. How many do you think he makes? What's your guess? What's your guess? 150. 150 is a good guess. He will come in mad if he's at $2.99. I'm not kidding you. He's weirdly good at this. Don't get excited. We don't make any money. So this is a weird talent. So he always enters contests for free throw shooting. All the, they have fundraisers for these things. So years ago, our kids were little, and there was one down at the Charger Stadium because I live in San Diego. And so in the parking lot of the Charger Stadium, they had this contest for a fundraiser for a disease. And so Rob goes down, and he's kind of cocky about it. I mean, he's kind of like, he kind of swaggers in. He knows he's good. Come on. And so the situation of this contest was you could make as many shots, take as many shots as you wanted in 5 minutes. It was how many you made in 5 minutes. So it wasn't consecutive, how many you made. So Rob puts his money down, and he's standing at the perfectly measured free throw line, because believe me, he took a tape measure and he measured it. So just so you know. So he's there. And he's taught me a couple things about making free throws. He says you want your knees bent. You want to use this hand to guide you, and our basketball coach here, am I right? This hand guides you, and then this one you got to have some follow through, right? And so you want to get into a little bit of a rhythm when you're shooting free throws. You want to get into a little bit of a rhythm. You want every ball perfectly placed right here. So this helps to get into a rhythm. And so Rob is ready, and he's just about to go because he knows he's just going to nail this thing. And the bell goes off, and he's put his money down, and he takes his first free throw. Now, there's a girl underneath the basket. She's feeding him. This person's important. She's feeding him. And by the way, she's terrible. So every ball is like, oh, this, he's got to grab it. And then this one, he's got to go run and grab it. He's starting to sweat. And he's got to go grab this ball. And they're all over the place. And she's not doing a very good job at all. And he's starting to sweat. And my husband, who never says a bad words are coming out of his mouth. And I've got my hands over the kid's ears. And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, what's going on? And he's sweating. And he's cursing. And he's freaking out. And, he ends up in 5 minutes with 55 free throws. Even like that, right? Even with that girl feeding him. So all day long, his name's on top of the reader board, and he feels pretty good about it. It's not his best, but he feels pretty good about it. So we go for lunch. His name's still up there. Second place person's at 38, so no one's even close. Come back from lunch. We hang around. Now it's going to end at 5. It's about 4:15. The director of marketing for the Chargers comes up to Rob and says, "Rob, I think your biggest competitor just walked in." So here's this kid, hat on backwards, big baggy shorts, loose T-shirt, kind of a baby face. He says, "Rob, I want you to meet Drew Brees." Now, Drew Brees was a rookie then. We didn't know who he was, brand new. And looked like he was 17 years old. But he had that swagger, that athletic swag. You could tell this guy wasn't just the starting quarterback on his high school team. This guy was a starting point guard. He was a starting shortstop. He even actually, this is a true story, Drew Brees beat Pete Sampras in juniors tennis. I mean, Drew Brees is a phenomenal athlete. He's got great hands, right? So Drew Brees is kind of swaggering over to the free throw line, and he gets there, and he's just about to take his free throws. Big difference. Underneath the basket, the girl's not there. It's LaDainian Tomlinson, okay? So you have professional hands now feeding professional hands. Some of the best hands in football feeding one of the best quarterbacks ever in football, right? So you've got this thing going. Every ball's perfectly placed. Drew Brees is laughing. He's chuckling with the other team players. He's not sweating. He's just having a ball. The steam is coming out of Rob's ears. He's so angry and so mad. And he's just having the greatest time. And Drew Brees is very quickly at 35. Then he's at 45. Now he's at 55. I'm not kidding you. I think Rob's going to pass out. He's dying. Drew Brees ends up with 64 free throws in 5 minutes, and Rob is going to kill somebody. Director of marketing comes up to Rob and says, "Rob, if you want, there's still time. You could put your money down, and you could go again." And I go, "No." And Rob goes, "Oh, yeah, boom, all right." Money goes down. Rob is at the free throw line. He is so determined. And something happens. Drew Brees says, "I'll feed you." Drew Brees gets under the basket. What a gentleman. I get choked up when I think about it. He gets under the basket, and he is ready. And the ball, the bell goes off. And every ball is perfectly placed. You have some of the best hands in football. They are so perfect. And Rob's very quickly at 25. He's now at 45. So quickly at 55. Now he's at 65. He's at 75. He's at 85. Rob ends up with 93 free throws in 5 minutes. And Rob turned to Drew and he said, why'd you do it? Why'd you do it? I know you're a competitor. I know you wanted to win. He says, "Yeah, I want to win, but I don't want to win with an asterisk." He says, I don't want to win with an asterisk. He says, "I want to win, but I want to win right." Now you think about, Lance Armstrong. You think about Ryan Lochte. You think about, all these, Barry Bonds. all these great athletes, and their legacies. These are people that had legacies that they could take with them forever. And they ruined their legacies because of silly, silly mistakes. It's good to be competitive. It's good to want to win, and it's good to want your organization to be, be the best it can be very successful financially. But you don't want to win with an asterisk. And so with that, I will just close with the American Indian grandfather that was sitting with his grandson. And the grandson says to him, "Grandfather, I feel like there are two wolves tearing my heart." He said, "This one wolf is angry, and he's disrespectful, and he lies, and he cheats." And he says, "And this other wolf is very empathetic and compassionate and respectful and honorable." And he says, "And my worry is I just don't know which wolf will win." And the grandfather turns to his grandson and he says, "The one you feed." Yeah, the one you feed. And so with that, I love that you feed yourselves every single month with this meeting. And I hope that these little stories have given you just a little bit of nutrition to live just a little bit better. Thank you very much.